DrHippi versus Breath.
Your first opponent is?
Breath.
Okay. Are you nervous? Do you know
Not
much
at
about
all.
him?
I don't really know about him, but my lineup is favorite, especially because he is playing freeze match. My lineup is good versus freeze match.
What do you think about DrHippi?
我第一个对手 DrHippi， 然后他的套牌和我都差不多，但是我带了一个兵法，打他的所有套牌都是劣势。
How do you think China stacks up against the rest of the world?
我觉得现在就是世界的炉石水平其实比较接近，现在大家玩的套牌都比较相似，因为现在是炉石有些职业强，有些职业弱，是这样的。中国的黄金赛嘛，是我们打的比赛都是从很多人里面打出来的。天梯的话，人越多，你打到高排名是越难嘛。
Do you think Europe's the best region in the world as far as competitive Hearthstone goes? Whoa. Whoa.
我觉得可能会比较难打，但是我还是有信心能赢吧。
Greetings from the commentator's desk and welcome everybody to BlizzCon opening weekend. If you're just tuning in, you came right on time for the third match of the day. My name's Frodan. I am joined by Sottle. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm still trying to recover from that insane series that we just watched. That was about as close as a series of Hearthstone gets, and some fantastic play from both players coming right down to the wire, but hopefully we've got another fantastic series up ahead of us.
That's right, we are halfway through the day. Coming up, we have Breath representing China, as well as all those combatants happening in the Gold League series, up against his opponent, DrHippi, one of the stars that the Western ACT has been able to bring up from 2016. And I think a lot of people have been looking at DrHippi potentially as the breakout star of the year.
Yeah, I think he absolutely is. Honestly, he's gone from being almost a complete unknown at the start of 2016 to being one of, I think, the most popular picks for the, the Pick Your Champion pack giveaway theme for the Blizzard are running. So I've seen a lot of tweets with his face on them saying that they picked their champion as DrHippi, and he's earned that respect. He's really taken advantage of the Hearthstone Championship Tour system and got his name out there and performed not only in these HCT events, but also in other events outside of that.
Yeah, he certainly is getting his name out there, as well as his hair. What inspired him to do that color, Sottle? To do a bright orange? Is it the Virtus Pro connection? Is it the fact that he just wanted to go crazy out there?
Hold on, coming from you!
Who
coming
would
from
ever
you,
do something
Frodo?
like that?
Unbelievable. The man sitting next to me is throwing shade on other people's hair colors. Please.
I didn't say it was bad. I was just saying that it was interesting.
There was definitely some negative connotation in there, I think.
I think you're overreading things.
Okay.
But if there's anything that I know about DrHippi outside of the fact that his hair is fantastic,
Yep.
is that
There you go.
Where's the camera?
Model it. Yeah, find it. There you
Outside
go.
of the fact that both of our hairs are fantastic. Actually, three's a crowd. Sottle actually joins us in the hair club. The fact that DrHippi also comes in here as one of the highest win rates out of any Western professional player this year. He's entered a handful of tournaments, about 4 or 5, but his win rate above them has excelled everybody else just because he has played that few tournaments, but he's been successful in every single edition that he's been able to be part of HCT.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an incredible record for him, and he's such an impressive player. He's a player that's, got respect for his results and his mechanical technical play as well, which is a hard combo to combine. There's some perception that some of these really successful players perhaps aren't the best technical players, and some technical players don't have the tournament results to back that up. But DrHippi really has the respect and the results to back that up. And we're going to see a good old-fashioned Druid mirror match coming up here. And the interesting thing about DrHippi's lineup, no great surprise, he has almost identical lineup and identical strategy to what we just saw from Neyman in the previous series, his Virtus Pro teammate.
Yeah, really important to know that Firebat Admirable was astutely observing that DrHippi and Neyman have targeting Shaman as part of their lineups. Banning Warrior, not that big of a surprise, so that way you can just focus on the Shaman, exploit the weaknesses. Brett does a similar strategy, although he's playing Freeze Mage, and as you said in the preview, as well as the match crosscut, you see that Brett doesn't feel like he's in a good position because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very high-risk deck, and it's something we've seen people flirt with and maybe come to backfire for some of the players who got really deep. I'm looking at George C, for example, a very loyal Freeze Mage player, but potentially Freeze Mage the deck that just cost him that final against DrHippi, another Freeze Mage loyalist himself who chose not to bring it to that tournament and is sat here very, very close to the BlizzCon stage because of it.
Now, I do know that there's an old adage of those who's able to ramp early on against their opponents in the Druid mirror tends to be the favored one. However, do you want this much ramp, Sottle? Yeah, both interface, both wild growth.
I mean, you would by far rather have too much ramp than no ramp at all, right? Like, by having all of these draws in your opening hand, the innovates and the wild growth, it makes everything that you hit more or less live. And we'll never know, but we'll assume that that card that he just hit is a live draw. It's a no. There we go. So yeah, I mean, that's not one of the straight-up better draws in terms of instant development, but with all this mana that he now has access to, it's a great draw to dig out the rest of his deck, and then he can use the innovates immediately, perhaps, for a power play onto the board. And DrHippi, although he's hit some ramp himself, is just lagging a little bit behind here on the race for resources.
Yeah, and based off the way the matchup ends up going, too, is that the player that is able to get that early snowball lead onto the board sometimes matters more than just how much you're able to ramp. Because, you know, like you said, if you're taking too much time to develop, your opponent's able to get that damage in and eventually rush your opponent down with some big swings on the board, especially because of cards of how impactful things like Arcane Giant are in this matchup. So, you know, you have sometimes DrHippi players like this where you're able to get some early game board and ramp, but sometimes you don't really get the spells to get the Arcane Giants out. Versus Brett's position, all he has to do is land to a couple of swingy stuff, and you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, as the Mind Keeper is drawn here, which is a huge pickup for DrHippi, that now pretty much squares him away in terms of the mana generation starts from both players. But it's worth noting, to the point that you just made, neither of these players are running a natural copy of Mulch in their Druid list. So Arcane Giants just jamming Malagos on the board. These are the two things that are potentially going to have a huge impact on the matchup, unless Raven Idol can pick up some of that hard removal that they'll need to take care of them.
Yeah, that Arcane Giant we're talking about is one of those swingy cards in this matchup, and Breath able to get it out on, I think it was turn 4, perhaps? He was able to just keep wild growthing into innervating out this Giant was absolutely nuts. And DrHippi does have ways to deal with it. It does get quite expensive, though. Depends on how he wants to pair things together.
Yeah, I mean, Wraths are such a great cycle tool in this deck. He does have a clean kill with just the Blood Mage and double Wrath to deal 8 to the Arcane Giant, but that's such an investment of resource when your hand is running a little bit dry. You'd be casting 2 spells, so your Arcane Giant would go down to 9, which means next turn you could actually coin your own Arcane Giant, use the coin on 7 to play it for 8. So with that in mind, I actually like the 8 damage Wraths play, because what other gas do you need, right? You have your Arcane Giant set up for next turn, you have the Blood Mage on the board that's going to draw you a card. So having considered the next couple of turns, this definitely looks like the line, and we're going to see a very swingy back and forth game here, unless there's a big pickup from Breath. That's not it.
No. At least he got that draw out of the way. Dig deeper into his deck. Look for some way to start climbing back on the board. Maybe not this turn. Maybe the next turn. Look at these combos. He has Malagos, Moonfire, and Living Roots. As well as Azure Drake, not a bad pickup either.
Right, and think about what this means for the shape of the game over the next couple of turns, because if we see Hippie now go for the Coin Giant play, then suddenly there's Innovate, Malagos, and the 2 removal spells to take care of the Giant. So this could swing back and forth enormously over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, this matchup went from 0-60 real fast, Sottle. It went from, all right, I'm just going to ramp a little bit, all the way to the fact that each turn, you're throwing down these huge bombs on the board, trying to end the game decisively.
Yeah, it's not really a style of play that's too quickly associated with this deck, or just the slugfest of huge minions coming back and forth, but this matchup is usually decided by someone sticking a huge threat to the board, be it an Arcane Giant, be it Malagos, be it Fandral. It's very rarely decided just by the pure combo damage, so you've seen both of these players play it out in that fashion, and I think it's Breath that's just edged the final advantage here, unless DrHippi can find some spectacular way out of this.
Well, I guess the positive side of things is that Breath has used both of his Living Roots and a Moonfire, so he does have a lot of stuff available to him with swipes and maybe one more Moonfire, but at the same time, maybe he doesn't hold anything too. It's one of those scenarios where maybe you have to just assume your opponent doesn't have any more removal spells in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple question and answer session here for DrHippi, which is, do I ever beat Swipe in this situation? To which your snap call is no. So I think you do just have to go, just, you know, jam in as much board presence and damage in this case as he can. Get a little bit out of range with the Feral Rage armor as well from the Fandral effect. And sure, if there's a Swipe, you pretty much lose the game on the spot. But Swipe is a card that's just always going to beat you in this situation.
As your Drake to dig a little deeper, Mire Keeper, not exactly the most helpful card here. Do you want to prioritize removing that Fandral because you understand the threat it presents with a lot of other cards like Raven Idol and those sorts?
I think like Raven Idol is the one thing you lose to right now. You've had your Malagos stick. You know your opponent is low on resources just looking at the hand size. So Raven Idol is needed for them just purely for a spell to hit a Mulch or a Naturalize or something to take care of the Malagos. So since Raven Idol is a threat to you, you really want to stop that Raven Idol being way too powerful, as well as things like Nourish that can pull him back into the game as well by drawing cards, still having a bunch of mana available. So I think taking care of the Fandral is the play that I favor this time.
It's clear that DrHippi doesn't have Fandral. Oh, sorry, doesn't have the Fandral. He doesn't have the Raven Idol though, because he would have played it last turn. So Breath is just trying to cut out the amount of draws that DrHippi could get the next turn to potentially come back into this game, and I like it. Moonfire, pretty weak in this position. Probably one of the worst draws for DrHippi at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. The Geddon will take care of the Drake here and actually directly contest the Malagos the way this is set up. So he can trade into the Drake. The Baron Geddon will clear off the Drake and turn the Malagos into a 4/7, which is obviously contested by the Baron Geddon. So if he can stick the Geddon to the board, that might be a solution for him. And you know, based on the complete lack of options that the other two cards present to him, I really don't see any other line. But he could just choose to flip the switch and try and push for damage here and draw his own Malagos.
Yeah, there is that option as well. If we count up how much damage DrHippi can aggressively push this turn, if he does 4 with the Mire Keeper plus Hero Power and 6 with Baron Geddon, he puts his opponent down to 7. Still slightly outside the range of Malagos Moonfire, so it's not exactly an one-outer there in that position.
Yeah, it looks like that. He's going downtown, all right. He's playing a win in this situation. Needs to pick up the Malagos, but as you said, also needs to pair a spell with it if his board gets cleared. So he's going to need 2 draws, and although the Wild Growth does provide him with that cycle, he's not going to have the mana available to push through at that point. But other combinations of cards can do it as well, and it's all a formality because Breath is chilling on the Feral Rage anyway.
Oh. Wrath is pretty strong. 7 damage, and you get to draw a card. Not to mention remove the biggest threat on the board here. Feral Rage gonna put you back up to 18, or sorry, 15. And Breath just feels like this is smooth sailing from him. He's gonna be able to keep Malagos onto the board for multiple turns, and that's a position that DrHippi cannot fight back from.
Yeah, remember, DrHippi does play Yogg-Saron. We saw it have a huge impact in Neyman's game earlier, and they are playing very, very similar lineups, so he has the Yogg as well. So that might be Breath's consideration here with the kind of the slow play on the Mire Keeper, just deciding how much he wants to commit into potentially a Yogg-Saron blowout. But you know, with the resources he has in hand, Emperor and Drake still chilling in hand for Breath, so he can definitely afford to just eat a Yogg-Saron here with this board.
Okay, Raven Idol does give DrHippi some options here. Is there any world that you would go for a minion as opposed to a spell?
I don't think so. I mean, there are worlds where that is correct. I just don't think this board state is one of them. Yeah, sure, but yeah, I think spell is just favorable. You need to address this Malagos first and foremost to get anywhere. These are just complete whiffs in the situation. But yeah, what minion are you looking for, honestly? Like, minion into Yogg so you can draw your Yogg more consistently, minion into Rag and hit the Malagos. Like, it's really limited options.
It's true. There's only a handful of charge and direct damage options. Perhaps another try here. I mean, Raven Idol could pick up another Moonfire, perhaps, and then if he picks up Malagos, how much damage would that be? That'd be 14. It's still a little off.
Gonna dig though, does go spell again, and wow, I mean, yeah, I think it's Moonfire time. It's got to be the plan, right? He still has roots in his deck as well, so this is now just a survival game for DrHippi. Make sure he gets that hero power damage to face every turn so Breath doesn't start scaling out of range, and just hope that he lives long enough to get back-to-back draws of Malagos plus more burn. And That might be good enough for him, but he's going to get the sad news that there is a 1-mana 8/8 in his future, which changes the clock significantly, and it's probably Yogg or bust time. It's that time again, Frodan.
Yeah, I don't think... Well, he could also play Malygos defensively to try to clear, but that's not going to win him the game.
Right.
And Emperor Thorson is not it, with 8, 10, 21... 22 damage just being represented on the board. This is a really tough spot, but at the same time, Brett doesn't exactly have the kill in hand either. So there's still hope. Very small inkling of hope.
Yeah, and this is smart too. I think he's sending this claw damage to the face just to, you know, he realizes what his win condition is here. He's never going to get control of this board ever again. Taking care of a minion doesn't give him the time that he's going to need. So he sends the damage to face, and now the get and draw. How much is that? 21, 23, 24 with the hero power?
Yes.
And it gets it. That's... Ugh.
So he's just a little bit off here. I mean, he could, hypothetically, kill his opponent with Yogg-Storm. I'm glad that you started chuckling right before I finished that sentence. But I think that is a dangerous game. That is Russian roulette at its finest.
Yeah.
Up against DrHippi, which I don't think you want to tempt fate there.
How to throw a game at BlizzCon.
Yeah, that's where you put the black and white color tones on with the entertainer music in the background.
There you go.
Well, Swipe's not going to do it, so DrHippi looks like he is cornered for this game, and Breath takes a very crucial game number 1.
Yeah, huge deal. Mirror matches in particular, you know, obviously you want to get off to a good start with game 1, but if that game 1 ends up as being a mirror match, that can just very much be the thing that breaks the entire flow of the series in your favor. So having both queued into a mirror, they would have both been praying for those big ramp starts. They ended up both getting them, which actually created a pretty engaging Druid mirror that swung back and forth a couple of times. But in the end, Breath was just able to nail it down.
All right, well, we'll be right back right after this with game number 2.
The Hearthstone World Championship is sponsored in part.
They tell you what match it is next. They tell you what match.
So you're a part of Team Celestial. You were the MVP. Team Story Season 1. Nice little bonus there for you. How has Team Celestial helped you out? It's sort of a little bit of a different team. Why don't you explain a little bit how that works?
其实我觉得 CL 其实不是一个队，它像是我们很多爱好者组成的一个，就是当时我们都在国服天梯能打到很前的玩家，大家在一起的话，就你能从其他人身上学到东西，可能他玩这个职业比较好，你玩这个职业比较好，然后我们可以互相学习，然后最后对你炉石这个就是对炉石游戏水平提高是很大的，我觉得。
There are a lot of players in China. They have the most players on their ladder than any other region. You think that gives you an edge having to compete against so many players in order to qualify for a championship?
当然有帮助。就我们打的比赛都是说从很多人里面打出来的，要打的轮次可能会比其他国家的比赛要多。如果从那种比赛想要拿冠军，想要出现想要拿冠军的话，打的轮次会要多。我觉得对你的要求比较高，对运气的要求也比较高。
But we're just getting started. We kick things off with Druid versus Druid. And now Breath looking to cement his lead, who did come off of a great performance in the spring season for Gold League, being able to win that. Now, Sottle, winning a Gold League is really tough. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that compete over the course of seasons of Gold League.
Yep.
And they also have to go through a lot of people. He's also had to do this like over the course of multiple seasons. Breath not only won the spring season, but he's also gotten top 4 multiple times in the past previous to that too. So his consistency is definitely noteworthy.
Yeah, definitely one of the most consistent players in the Chinese scene. I don't think too many other players have come close to his record in the Gold Series events. And as you said, they are huge, sprawling events that China used to seed into this World Championship process. So he's been on his grind to get here just as much as anyone else has. And he's now seeing all that hard work pay off as he is 1-0 up against, as I said at the start, one of the players that a lot of people are picking up as the favorite to win this whole thing.
All right, well, let's go into Mage versus Shaman. Now, this is one of the classes that we had a question mark over our heads on how well it performed, which is slightly ironic to say given the perception of Shaman currently in the metagame. A lot of people pick Shaman as the ubiquitous strong deck of the entire format. It's at a tier by itself. Right. Many players would even consider, and yet it seems to be the victim of being targeted. Why is that, Subtle?
Well, I mean, that's the big question, right? It's, you know, 100% of the time, every single person is bringing Shaman, right? So if you can target the deck, if you get a lineup that beats Shaman, that puts you in a phenomenal position in the tournament. The question you have to ask repeatedly is that possible? And we've seen a couple of players try it through tech choices like Baron Geddon and Harrison in a bunch of decks. Amnesiac going full Cobalt Geomancer in his Shaman so that his Shaman wins the mirror. But the important thing is that these are, you know, soft target lineups against Shaman. They're powerful against Shaman through tech choices, but they haven't given up too much in other matchups, so they can still pick up wins elsewhere. This isn't a frozen Priest situation where he can literally only beat the deck he's targeting.
Well, we actually do coincidentally have one of those lineups here in the championship. Hamster, also from China, playing a Priest and Paladin lineup.
He did not go full frozen with his Priest.
He did not go full frozen. But at the same time, maybe no one should go full frozen.
It's a fair point.
DrHippi going to remove that Mana-Tide Totem. Very threatening for Shaman to draw too many cards. Definitely weigh the positive negatives of using Frostbolt versus Arcane Blast. You think Frostbolt's just better used in that position because of how cheap the other spells were?
Yeah, I think so. And Arcane Blast is just a value card that you can, or a tempo card that you can use to get a big swing. You know, in the later exchanges, they play Drake, you play Drake Arcane Blast, and you get a huge advantage on the board that way. So definitely useful interactions for it in the mid game. But you can see in Brett's hand as well, one of his choices to try and tilt his Shaman deck towards the Shaman Mirror, because of course he has the same kind of strategy as DrHippi, the Argent Horse Rider, which was primarily added into these mid-range strategies that aren't really at all aggressive. Is a replacement to Tuskar Totemic, but B, just to keep spell damage totems off the board in the mirror. So if a spell damage totem came out, you could just snipe it down immediately with the Horse Rider.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that it also gives you ability to push the pace a little bit, because mid-range Shamans tend to be a little bit too slow by focusing hero power centric. When you have Flame Tongue Totem, when you have Bloodlust and these kinds of finishers in your deck, the Argent Horse Rider does have a little bit more use in that regard.
Certainly true, but yeah, the opening exchanges here, perhaps breaking in DrHippi's favor now. He's got a Flame Waker to stick to the board, which is such a huge deal for him. There is the availability of, you know, Horse Rider in combination with buffs and AoEs to take care of it at some point, but he does get this one free turn out of his Flame Waker to just wreak havoc all over this board.
Yeah, he does have choices. Of course, when he picked up Cold Sorcerer, the first thing that I eyeballed was Arcane Explosion to potentially to just sweep the board here. And that's a very powerful opportunity for Flame Waker to clear the board and get some damage in with missiles as well if you choose to go for it. That is a whiff, but Arcane Missiles most likely will clean this up. There you go.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty ridiculous odds to leave that 2-1 alive after 6 additional missiles are fired, but now the AoE has been used, and we saw this very much dictating this matchup when Neyman played it in the previous series, is that he chose to use his Flame Strike and his Arcane Explosion in situations where maybe he could have been a little bit more greedy with them, and then we saw Shaman starting to flood the board and come back into it. So the usage of AoE against Shaman is so key to time, because almost, you know, down to a T, whenever you think, okay, now this time he won't be able to refill the board, they just go ahead and refill the board. Like, they can just keep doing it somehow.
Yeah, you're going to lose the board eventually against the Shaman. It's all about how you pace yourself, of whether or not you're able to finish the game by the time they seize the board back.
Right.
You have things like Fireballs that can count backwards. How much damage do you need to plug that gap? In your mind, maybe 12, 13 damage. You have 5 on board, so all of a sudden you're not that realistically far from killing your opponent, and that's why you'd rather invest into the board as opposed to play conservative like you mentioned.
Yep, I mean, I like it in this situation for sure. When it's backed up by that Fireball and backed up by the fact that your opponent showed you no answer to Flame Waker on the previous turn, this does feel like a situation where you can make a safe push. So I'm totally okay with DrHippi's line here, and Now picking up Blood Mage, so it's a redraw at least. It's a cantrip. It does dig further into his deck, but it's not a particularly powerful play on this turn. Sure, we will see it developed, and the ping used on the Horse Rider. Do you like the Arcane Blast on the Flame Tongue, just so you get to send some damage downtown?
I mean, at the same time, though, the Arcane Blast might be really useful that you have 2 Spell Power minions to get past things from below or other problematic cards that will continue to threaten you, Fire Elemental, for example. So it does feel like it's not necessary. Plus, he already used his Argent Horse Rider. So, and he doesn't have 2 of them, so I feel like it's less threatening from any charge minions that would benefit from it as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's not much of a punish for just leaving it alive here. Like, I love that the damage always goes face for sure, but if you leave it alive, like, even if Feral Spirits comes out, which is sometimes a punish, you can still just go ahead and, like, deal with it with the Arcane Blast or just take care of the minions with the Arcane Blast anyway, so I didn't mind holding onto it at all there, but DrHippi does decide to just hold onto the board, and he might end up in the situation now where he has to fireball a thing from below, and he definitely does not want to be doing that because that fireball is potentially his win condition right now. Oh, never mind.
Maybe he doesn't have to.
Never mind. We're good.
Well, although we've been seeing people choosing a very conservative line of approach, choosing to Fireblance Portal minions as opposed to aggressively to end the game. And DrHippi, once again, not guaranteed a way to finish the game, but Firelands Portal, very clean kill. 5 damage on a 5/5.
Yeah.
7 mana. It just feels like a match made in heaven. Hey, look at that. Situational irony. This is what I passed English high school lessons for.
That's good. It's impressive. I
Yeah.
like it. Good. You speak
Passed. I didn't ace.
I was going to use the same old joke again and say that you speak better English than Raven, but then
That's always funny.
it's true. I mean, it's an evergreen joke. We can just pull it out at any
like
point.
Adam Sandler movie, still funny.
There you go.
Well, Lightning Bolt plus Angry Chicken. Angry Chicken finally getting some playtime in the HCT. Not bad. At least it functioned. There's been a lot of times where people try to make Angry Chicken work, just doesn't.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I was reminded as I was looking through some of the Road to BlizzCon stuff that Sidonia actually qualified for this event with a young Dragonhawk power overwhelming combo.
Right. Yeah.
Which just some of the insane things that like the Discover mechanics in this game particularly make happen is just so awesome. But
some of the portals too. We saw Gubarashi Berserker getting a lot of value.
Yeah, but Angry Chicken's still waiting for his moment in the sun. But in the meantime, while we were talking about various 1/1s, the Shaman has taken that grip on the border that we both expected it to at some point, and DrHippi just isn't there with the amount of direct damage yet, so it looks like this one might just slowly slip away from him, but that Forgotten Torch is a very important pickup.
Yeah, this is the build of the mage from DrHippi that focuses on transition to kill your opponent very fast by having things like Forgotten Torch and Acolyte Pain so you can draw into that Roaring Torch. Look at that, the Cold Sorcerer. Is that... Are you threatened to die the following turn, though? If you look at how much power is on board, there's 16. So if your opponent just has a little bit extra, you die.
Yeah, you can realistically die to just like Tunnel Trog Overload, right? Like, yeah. Totem Golem Feral Spirits would kill you. So
yeah, or Thunderbluff Valiant, or Fire Elemental.
Lightning Bolt, Bloodlust, Fire Elemental. Like the deck kills you at this point.
But then how does DrHippi win if he's just spending time removing constantly?
Yep, I agree. DrHippi would have been sad just saying one Flame Strike please to himself at that point, but having got at least an out with the spell damage, he now puts himself in range for additional burn off the top. So
he has 1 Fireball and 1 Roaring Torch in his deck, so he's able to use that to end, or as well as maybe another Firelands board.
No, just the one in his list. He's already used it. Yeah.
Then a Ragnaros then.
Yeah, that's actually interesting, because that is the one difference in his lineup from Naaman's, is the Ragnaros in place of the Kabbalist Tome.
Flame Tongue Totem, I believe, might actually be lethal, because he could still... No, he wouldn't be able to do it, unfortunately.
There's no way to, like, remove a minion to get the buff slide over thing, right?
You can't cast Feral Spirits on a full board, unfortunately. So it's just a little bit off. But, I mean, you know the opponent's not holding cards, and everything is out on the table for both players, so Breath just has to pretty much put himself in the best position to win, which is removing the board, which he almost certainly has guaranteed lethal if he's able to get to the next turn.
Yep. And now there is burnouts. There is also still the Flame Strike out. That's not a Flame Strike, but it is a Fireball. And DrHippi played to his outs, picked up the Fireball, squares up the series.
Why are we surprised? Why are we surprised? I believe every one of us who's watching this has experienced exactly that going up against the mage. We're just like, yeah, they have no possibility of killing me except that they draw Fireball.
Yeah.
And Sottle, it's always Fireball.
Every single time. I mean, occasionally it's Roaring Torch. You gotta be fair here. We gotta be fair.
Yeah, but just as Soulfire discards the other Soulfire, this is just one of the laws of Hearthstone.
Yeah, a mage out of cards will either draw Yogg or draw Fireball. I think that's the way it works. Yeah.
All right, well, an exhilarating finish to game number 2. Let's find out what happens in game number 3 right after this.
So you're back again.
Again.
Nice hair.
Nice hair. You too.
No mohawk? No?
No.
It looked really good.
I don't think so.
So, I drew you because I was a big fan of you when you won. I was happy that you qualified.
Thank you.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Could you sign it for me?
Yes.
Okay. In what? DrHippi, XD.
Привет всем, меня зовут Артем, я из Украины. Хотите болеть за меня на чемпионате мира.
Well, that just happened.
It did, yeah. I think we just saw the first recorded fade to orange in esports broadcasting.
Yeah, a new trend. A lot of trends are happening, apparently. Dyeing your hair ridiculous colors and now fading to orange. And DrHippi, he burned TJ so badly that he didn't even show up to the first day of broadcast.
I know, it just couldn't recover from the savage intimidation that is DrHippi and just left at home crying. He's actually really ill, and we send our best wishes to him and hope that he's back tomorrow.
So he can come back. In the meantime, we're going to resume this best of 7. A job well done to DrHippi the previous game, being able to play to his outs. He was in a really tough spot because we always know Shaman wins from that position. And now Breath is forced to play Shaman again, and DrHippi's strategy hasn't fallen apart. Because remember, we're talking about how Naaman and DrHippi prepared together. They're on Virtus Pro on the team together.
Yeah.
And they were trying to corner these Shaman decks. And if he lost to Shaman in the second game, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and it basically came about a lot from the fact they were trying to find a 5th deck, and they were originally on Zoo as their 5th deck, and then it was actually DrHippi that came up with the idea of, well, if we just play Face Hunter instead of Zoo in that situation, maybe we can soft target Shaman, and that kind of evolved into this strategy that they have now. So see how it works out. He's picked up 1 win against Shaman, and remember, this isn't like the hard strategy where they have to beat Shaman with all of their decks and that's their strategy. You know, if they can pick up 2 or 3 wins against the Shaman and then the Shaman squeaks through, the idea of a soft target strategy is that gives you enough of an overall advantage that the rest of your decks can then push through.
Yeah, that's a great summary of their strategy going into this series. DrHippi introduced with a couple of choices. He had Living Roots to fight back, perhaps on board, but with Wild Growth in hand, Nourish kind of makes sense given to how he wants to play out the course of the following turns.
The second Trog picked up means that we see the rare occurrence of a coin turn 1 play that is not Totem Golem from the Shaman. He just plays out both of his Tunnel Trogs. He's going to buff them up next turn. DrHippi will fear what's coming, but deep down he's going to expect it. There it is. The Shaman could be getting over the line a little bit quicker than the Virtus Pro guys would have wanted at this point.
Yeah, ouch. This is exactly what you always have nightmares over when you play against Shaman. The fact that they can snowball the board with things like Tunnel Trog And they also have just such powerful mid to late game options as well, whether it's removal through Hex to gain tempo, or utilizing their power through cheap stuff like Flame Tongue and Spirit Claws and actually just start killing you.
Yeah, it used to be a much simpler equation, you know, back in the days of Face Shaman. I can't believe I'm reminiscing about Face Shaman, but whatever. So it used to be then if you just gripped the board and gained some life at some point, it was a really simple equation because they had no way back at that point. But now, even if you stabilize against mid-range Shaman, they're perfectly capable of swinging back at you with those cards like Hex. So it makes overwhelming starts like this a much more daunting proposition.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no real distinct clarification of playing a mid-range style versus playing an aggressive style with this opening. This is universal across every Shaman deck. They love playing these three cards, the Tunnel Trog, the Totem Golem, and the Flame Tongue.
Yeah, these are just the cards that kill you. It doesn't really matter which archetype you're playing. If you get this start, you're going to put the hurting on some other matchups. So DrHippi is going to desperately try and scramble for some mana here to try and fight onto the board. And he may be going straight for the Innovate Yogg out here with the backup plan of just generating some giants on the board. But this is such a small percentage out for him. He has played for it, and hats off to him. Very similar to the last game. He's recognizing his small percentage win conditions and going for them. But it's just not happening.
Breath had a 1 in 4 chance to just kill his opponent this turn. A little bit off, but just like you said, even if DrHippi gets that Innovate Yogg, he has to do some magical, wonderful things. Raven Idol could help, I guess, if you heal up a little bit, but still you're staring at 10 damage on the board plus the weapon.
Yeah. You just can't get there, right? Like even the healing, the maximum is 8, wouldn't pull him out of range. So, wow, that was a wow. Yeah, exactly. It took the words out of my mouth. Insane.
Yeah. Did you say it took your breath away?
Oh, this is why you're the champ.
That was the reaction I was looking for. Thank you, son. Yeah, I mean, nothing really much to say there. Sometimes you just have the nuts. And you can't really do much to stop it as Druid, which did have Innervate and Wild Growth and Raven Idol as early game options, hitting a lot of his ramp, but just still couldn't stop that snowball of the board.
Yeah, and the greater point here is this is the question I was asking, right? Obviously, the way Conquest works, if you know everyone is bringing Shaman, if you can target Shaman, obviously you target Shaman, but the thing that's prevented people from doing that for such a long time is the question, can you do it? And you saw right there why most people seem to think you cannot.
All right, well, we're going to get game number 4 started right underway in just a sec. Stay tuned.
The Hearthstone World Championship is sponsored.
How did you start to realize that you wanted to play competitively? What made you want to start competing in tournaments?
中国的黄金赛嘛，是在中国各个城市，能去到一个新的城市可以去玩，然后又可以去打比赛。我比较享受这种比赛的状态，然后，所以我去年去打了几站黄金赛，然后而且成绩都还不错吧。 因为都能进到4强决赛，然后我就觉得可以把炉石当做一个职业来打。我喜欢玩这个游戏，而且我也比较享受炉石比赛给我带来的快乐。
Walk me through a little bit of your experience playing in Gold Series and qualifying for the World Championship.
因为我在那个春季赛的时候，其实我每一场比赛都是从落后开始打的，然后。 而且每一轮我都觉得自己就到这里为止了，然后最后能赢吧，我也觉得我觉得我很意外，然后也很兴奋。
How do you think your life will change if you win the World Championship?
我大概会花一段时间在世界旅游吧，我觉得。
It's a good idea. Good idea.
Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us, Breath is currently up 2-1 over DrHippi. And as you see, he's a player that's had to battle a lot of adversity just mentally going through some of these series. As during the Gold League Series run, he kept losing every match in the very beginning and had to make big comebacks in order to win.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that tournament formats really test. It's not just testing your technical skill as a Hearthstone player or your deck building or your lineup construction. It's really testing the mental side of the game as well. And Breath there speaking to the fact that he has plenty of experience with the psychological barriers of playing in a live environment.
However, it's not the worst situation for Dr. Hippie. Remember, there's still that Freeze Mage, which had to ban the Warriors, so it kind of makes the Dr. Hippie in an awkward situation. Or sorry, Breath in an awkward situation. How you actually get the win with the Freeze Mage. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. In the meantime, Breath gonna queue up his Hunter. Dr. Hippie stays on the Druid. And Hunter seems to be doing pretty well, at least by today's measurements.
Yeah, it just fell a little bit short for Neyman in that previous series in that final matchup against Zoo, but he had some really, really poor draws in terms of his Face Hunter stuff. So hopefully, hopefully for Breath's sake, he's able to put something better together here. But yeah, as you mentioned, Dr. Hippie is in a rough spot, but not an incredibly bad spot because yes, the Shaman has gone down for Breath. He's won with it, but you know where a hard target strategy would just kind of cower when it was faced with the other decks. Dr. Hippie still just has solid stuff that's capable of winning a lot of other matchups, and that's the difference between his strategy and what we saw from someone like Frozen in the previous series.
Certainly, certainly. And the Hunter's been very good in the other games that we've watched it. When Sidonia played against Hansen Guy, both players were able just to play it once, get the win out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even BB Gun starting off and getting the win there. So you just look at how the Hunter's been relatively consistent, despite the fact that it plays an enormous amount of secrets. So it's something that's been very surprising, given the fact that we've underestimated cards like Catrick when Karazhan came out. Well, that secret's pretty good, but it ends up being one of the key components, I think, of allowing the Hunter to put on a lot of pressure and just using your opponents.
Yeah, for sure. And I love this play from Dr. Hippie. Just getting the innovates out of his hand before the Breath can start developing secrets, because Catrick is a keep in this matchup a lot of the time. So if you don't aggressively spend your innovates, you can get punished for it using that Catrick from Breath later on. So I love him just going super aggressive onto the board, and the draw of the Living Roots tied it all together to take care of the Secret Keeper.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And Breath now has to face down this 4/4, which is dominating the board.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, how does he answer this? Like, what are his outs at this point? Like, play Catrick and try and bluff freezing? Is that where we're standing at this point?
I mean, there's that. You can also just play Kindly Grandmother, play a little bit slow, hope that your opponent doesn't really do too much more impactful in the following turn, and then just use Kindly Grandmother to take care of whatever's left of the board if he follows up on it.
Yeah.
So not much 3 mana plays that Druid has. Right. If anything, they just have Feral Rage as the only 3 mana cost card in their deck. It's usually Hero Power Raven Idol.
So now, decision from Dr. Hippie. Feral Rage in the hand, the only actual play this turn. He could just choose to double trade out the Kindly Grandmother using the Hero Power and the trade from the Azure Drake, which probably seems a little bit favorable overall. A Hunter, not a deck that does 1 damage too well unless you have a wide board that is something they want to unleash the Hounds. So the double trade looks pretty reasonable here overall.
Yeah, and your late game is much better than the Hunters, considering that they top out at Leroy Jenkins, and below that, just pretty much the weapon.
Yeah, they said they top out at 3 with a Leroy. Like, that's basically how it's built.
Okay, so Brett's slowing down just to take his opportunity to control the board. And Dr. Hippie has whiffed, but this is sort of to be expected with Dr. Hippie's hand. He didn't have many good draws in this situation. Pretty much just Mire Keepers and, I guess, Raven Idols.
I mean, is there any merit to just using your turn on gaining the 8 life right now? Remember, Animal Companion is a card that's cut from these Face Hunter decks. It's just not played in most of them. So, you know, Amisha is usually one of the things that you want to Feral Rage offensively to take care of, or it's just going to kill you. So, yeah, looks like he is just going to go ahead and gain the life, just recognizing that he will probably want to do it at some point in the future. And with the Nourish in hand, the rest of his hand pretty much plays itself here. He can just go for mana, potentially even on the next turn, just to get an Arcane Giant down. But now facing the Secret on board, that might look a little less appealing.
Yeah, and this is what you want to do too as the Hunter on the backswing. Brett just loading up the board, realizing that his opponent has like a moment of weakness where he's playing cards that just don't really make sense on paper. Like, why would you play Feral Rage immediately then when you're not under threat? And that has to be a sign of an awkward hand. So Brett just immediately loading it up. And now Catrick forces Dr. Hippie to summon out this 4/2 because he almost certainly has to play a spell this turn. There's no way he can just pass.
Yeah, definitely doesn't look like pass is a viable option, but Dr. Hippie will be very scared about the long-term implications of Catrick here, because it will push 4 next turn. There's a good chance it connects again based on his hand, or at least allows the Cloaked Huntress to connect again if suddenly the cat becomes his swipe target. So yeah, he's definitely in a little bit of trouble, and he does actually go for the mana ramp. So now, of course, the cat is spawned now, but remember, like, Dr. Hippie that's a reactionary thing to what Hippie did. So Hippie already committed to this line of just potentially going Arcane Giant next turn without knowing if it was a freezing trap or not that was in play.
Right. And now Breath is just using this as an excuse to dump his hand and go all in, essentially.
Yeah, I
Push
like
the
it.
damage. And Dr. Hippie is probably going to have to hope for Yogg-Saron to be able to bail him out or be able to pick up really impactful cards. A second swipe would be excellent here.
Living Roots is helpful. I mean,
Living Roots is not bad either.
that definitely lets him tidy up. He does have to face tank a little bit more damage to get it done, but Living Roots is a great pickup here. Allows him to take all this damage off the board and potentially supercharge his Yogg a little bit more, as well as the Arcane Giant. And he's starting to find a way back into this. A lot of this could come down to what Breath is able to find on this tracking that's in his hand.
Yeah, Breath's just going to look for more damage as best as he can here.
Yeah, I think like Leroy or just something to play this turn, that kind of thing is what he's looking for. So we'll see. Horse Rider, Wolf Rider, Leroy Jenkins.
Not to mention whatever he draws as well.
Nope.
Pretty unlikely he'd be able to get the quick shot value this turn anyways.
So this makes a Leroy pickup much more appealing because he actually has a full-fledged turn this turn with just Argent Horse Rider plus Hero Power. And I think of these options, you're just looking at a kill command here. Argent Squire and Explosive Trap, not the card you're looking for at this point of the game against a Druid.
Yeah, with 5 damage in the hand already, kill command, let's just assume it's able to get max damage.
Wow!
That definitely is surprising to me, given that I was even considering Explosive Trap over the Squire, given that it's also damage. But Argent Squire in Breath is saying that by picking this, he feels like he can have more damage over time.
The light protects.
But not only that, he's also foregoing a hero power with this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he thinks I mean, he's gonna have to get a lot of damage in with this Squire because he's already missed 2 by not pressing Hero Power, and then he's missing at least 3 more by not having the kill command. So that's a lot of Argent Squire attacks.
Well, he certainly wants to dump his hand as well for the quick shot.
Hello.
Oh, Mark of
Nature
on the Arcane Giant?
Yep, and it works.
Pretty much exactly what you want. That or Mark of Nature, or sorry, Mark of the Wild.
Alternatively, Mark of Nature.
I apologize. Mark of the Wild is also one of those cards that can also do the same thing as well. Another tracking. Pretty mediocre options here. Don't help you get past that Giant immediately. And you know what? It's one of those things, too, where that Giant can close out the game very quickly, too, for Dr. Hippie.
I mean, it's just a straight-up 3-turn clock. Exactly, just with the Giant damage. And Breath doesn't have the kill command in his hand to get there. Wow. Is Breath going through this the hard way? Minions plus the...
Sure.
Whoa!
I don't know.
Steady on, my friend. That's a lot of damage.
He just took on 8 willingly. And also put himself down within 2 turns. He just accelerated the clock by 1.
Yep.
This Giant will not fall that easily. And now with Baron getting pickup, does that change things at all?
I don't think so. I mean, so just to explain, like Brett's plan here is next turn just to trade in potentially some of the damage that he has and use the quick shot to take care of it. But Dr. Hippie can kind of play the back and forth game here and say, okay, I see your line here. You want to potentially take care of this Giant with your minions. So now I just clear out your minions and like, now what's your plan?
Yeah. Now Breath has to hope that he draws more damage to get through and also just not die. Breath thought he saw the Great Wall of China. And then he saw the Great Wall of Dr. Hippie. How do you get past this thing? You can't.
I mean, his plan was just, you know, take 16 from it, and I guess it's a better plan than anything I could come up with. I think as soon as that Mark of Nature came down, after the point where he took the kill command, or took the Argent Squire over the kill command, it was always going to be difficult for him to find a direct damage out, so he did have to fight for the board, and now he's actually found himself a potential win condition. Could there be genius behind this madness, Frodan?
I have no idea. I mean, Dr. Hippie also doesn't know what secret is directly, too. A lot of trackings have been used, too, so just the possibilities could be very high in terms of the variance of what it could be.
Right.
So right now he is 2 damage off if he played Baron Geddon and the Moonfire. And then the Baron Geddon also has this caveat that you do damage to yourself and you might put yourself within range to die from your opponent's top deck. So do you play Yaxaron here? You could Moonfire and Yaxaron and try to get that remaining damage.
Oh boy. So if you Moonfire the 2-1 and Hero Power the face this turn, you are at 11. There is literally one card that kills you, right, in the deck.
Jenkins.
Yes. At which point, you then have your own draws for lethal next turn with Swipe and Living Roots and things like that. And you then still have the emergency kill switch plan of Yogg after that.
So you don't need to do it this turn.
Potentially. I mean, these are the kind of things that DrHippi has to consider. That's where my mind is going, but DrHippi will be considering his outs, and he would have been in this position significantly more often with this deck than I will. He's probably tested this matchup specifically since the Face Hunter is a deck in his lineup as well, so he will have a lot of comfort in this situation, but it looks like that is the line that we're going to see here.
I like it. You can still pick up ways to kill his opponent the following turn, assuming no taunt. There's Feral Rage, there's Swipe, and of course the Living Roots as well. Breath picks up a second Freezing Trap.
That's not it.
Oh,
so
man.
The bow is going to go through, and basically this is just a reset situation of what we saw last turn. DrHippi has himself a draw to just find a clean solution. If the clean solution isn't there, then he can go with the Yogg plan.
Oh,
come on!
Oh,
Please,
wow.
game. Hearthstone, don't do this to me.
Fireworks or July 4th, Sottle.
I mean, we are off to the
Yaxaron.
races. In before every Yogg spell comes up upside down, and we have to work it out from the animations.
Or card flipped over.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yaxaron just looking for 4 damage. Oh, that's 2.
Hello.
That's 2.
He's dead.
As long as he doesn't kill himself now.
Okay.
As long as nothing disastrous happens, he's got it.
His Wrath is green. He's alive. He's cast Innovate or something, and he's still alive this game.
I've been
I think he's
baited.
got it. I think he's got it. There's the Innovate.
Okay, everything looks pretty good from this point. And that's it. Curse of Reform will end it.
In the most bizarre of fashions, Head Crack and Curse of Reform off of Yaxaron ties up the series for DrHippi, but great recognition from him on the previous turn that he had that one free turn, right? He could wait, he found it, he took his outs, Yaxaron rewarded him for it in the end, and an absolutely crazy end to that game.
No, I think you're dead on the money there. The restraint, and just shows how much in control DrHippi is. Despite the fact that you don't get caught up in emotions, you know that you could have potentially won the game in other ways, but you stay calm, play your best, and he's able to tie up the series. Breath, in the meantime, is going to need to sit back and reevaluate as we get ready for game number 5. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Everybody here has experience now, but you have more experience than a lot of the players.
Yeah.
Do you think that you playing multiple times gives you an edge against some of your opponents?
Yeah, for sure I have more edge, because especially because my hair, I'll confuse my opponents.
They'll look across the desk and get distracted.
Yeah.
Do you think Europe's the best region in the world as far as competitive Hearthstone goes? Whoa, whoa, okay.
Isn't it?
I don't know.
It is.
If you have fans that are going to tune in and watch you, fans that maybe watched your run through, even when you took second place in winter, or fans that watched you win when you qualified, what would you say to those fans right now?
Hey guys, I'm just DrHippi.
DrHippi knows exactly what he's doing. Can we dispel this fiction that he doesn't? That he's just like this mysterious challenger? I think he is one of the most charismatic people to walk through that door to the HCT studio.
Frodan pulling back the curtain, exposing
This guy
DrHippi's scam.
is a genius.
He really is, yeah. But I have a question for you. Frodan. Is that why you dye your hair, to just confuse and perplex your enemies? Is that why you do
That's
it?
right,
Okay,
it is.
nice.
Yeah, it's my real life confusion spell. So that way I can intimidate my opponents. DrHippi's picked up on the Frodan strategy. TJ picked it up. It's worked out wonders for him.
Yeah, he's at home in bed. It's working great.
He's home in bed. Oh, poor TJ. Feel better soon, man. All right, let's go into game number 5 and see if Breath can swing back momentum. It's been tit for tat so far. Both players exchanging games. And now we go from a best of 7 to a best of 3. Conquest, we see if Breath is able to win with his Freeze Mage. This is an important match. And also kind of important that DrHippi didn't just get an easy way to have Hunter pressure the Mage as well.
Right.
Although I do have to ask, how does Freeze Mage fare well in the current meta? I know you talk to a lot of the top Freeze Mage players. Do you think it's a good pick for the tournament because it's so obscure, like people don't really expect it?
I mean, I'm not sure. There's definitely room for it in this soft target Shaman lineup, and I'm surprised that the other players who went for the soft target Shaman lineup went with Tempo Mage instead of Freeze Mage. I would prefer Freeze Mage in that lineup personally, so I think Breath perhaps has it right here, but even in this matchup, you have to be a very competent Freeze Mage player to find your edge. It is a favored matchup, but it's a very, very easy matchup to just throw away. If you make one little mistake in this matchup, you can just, throw the advantage over to the Shaman, especially if they have an aggressive opening like this.
Dang, that's a very aggressive opening. Pretty much what you want. You don't necessarily want to be playing the normal hero power on 2 as mid-range Shaman in this matchup. Now, Breath also has a couple of interesting choices. I'm looking at the Sheep as one of them. Polymorph. Definitely not a card that you see all the time in Freeze Mage. Do you have any opinions on that?
It's probably just for the Druid matchup. He's not banning Druid, he's banning out Warrior with his strategy, so Malygos Druid is actually a horrible matchup for Freeze Mage these days. They just have everything they need to be able to deal with you, and a big part of that is just 2 power minions, Malygos and Ragnaros, that you can't really deal with Freeze Mage. So adding the Polymorph gives you a little bit of an edge in that matchup. So that's probably his thinking with that. Definitely not designed for this mid-range Shaman matchup, but DrHippi with some unique ideas of his own, or Virtus Pro at least with some unique ideas of their own, because both Hippie and Neyman bringing this Defender of Argus in mid-range Shaman. What year is this, Frodan?
It's 2016 and we're playing Defender of Argus in Shaman. That used to be a beta tech. Used to play this in the old versions of Shaman, the very beginning of Hearthstone, where we were playing Chillwind Yetis and trying to taunt them up. And Defender of Argus was a young, bustling 3-3. Prior to having his legs taken away from him from ACL surgery. He was never the same again.
Indeed, but Argus, his time to shine is back. By the looks of things, he looks pretty powerful on curve here, allows to push some extra damage, take care of the Acolyte, no questions asked and no extra card draws given. But DrHippi might even go down the totem line here, but having the damage in hand where possible is always a useful tool against Freeze Mage, because they can interact with everything else. They can interact in a way that stops you from interacting with everything else. They cannot stop damage from hand, so it's such a valuable resource to have in the matchup.
Yeah, no Doomsayer comes into hand for Breath. You would be loving the ability to shut down his opponent's board, and that's all you would pretty much need in this matchup. One convincing board swing. Those, the 30, 40, 45% of the time, whatever you want to call this matchup in favor or unfavored for mid-range Shaman, a lot of times when they do beat Freeze Mage is because they don't have the answer very beginning to Shaman, right? And Shaman just snowballs out of control. Look at this! Having to polymorph a 1-mana minion, Subtle.
That's crazy, but it might just end up being the right decision for him, because with that still up, there would have been so much additional damage being pushed through here, and he's trying to use that polymorph. He thinks the potential damage he can take off the board with the polymorph is enough to stretch this game out one more turn. Means he has to use his Frost Nova one turn later, which by extension maybe allows him to get a little bit greedier with his Flame Strike. Like in Freeze Mage, all these decisions just push further and further down the line and influence all those extra turns you get.
Wow.
And there you see the instant gratification of Breath's decision, because many people would have just said, I'm taking too much damage here, I'm bleeding, I have to Frost Nova. He held on, used the polymorph. There's the payout with the Doomsayer. Incredible play from Breath.
Yeah. And we'll see whether or not DrHippi can at least do a little bit damage with the Spirit Claws here. Actually, he can kill off the Doomsayer as well.
He can.
He can use the Lightning Bolt.
But if you're keeping track, there is a coin still in your opponent's hand. So coin Flame Strike is a possibility, but that is only a one-of in the deck. So I think this is one of those kind of unique situations in Hearthstone where DrHippi is taking the right line here. Statistically, the fact that coin Flame Strike would come out here and ruin him is a low percentage thing. So I think he's taken the right line here with his decision, but he's quite possibly going to lose the game because of it.
Right. On average, this doesn't happen. your opponents be able to have specifically Frostnova Dreamstayer into the coin Flame Strike. But at the same time, this is what Breath was setting up for. You know, when he's able to see things like Polymorph play, that's a pretty good follow-up. Does provide a lot of pressure and force your opponent to react to it. But, you know, Brett's still very much competitive in this game. He's not being blown out at all.
Oh, he's not. DrHippi is trying to grind out, doing what Shamans do, and trying to just get some resources onto the board. So many high-value cards in their deck, as well as the constant pressure of totems that can be used as real attacking threats. Yes. But he is running out of steam, and Breath that he's just potentially going from strength to strength to here. If he can find one more big answer to a board state, one more Blizzard, one more Doomsayer going off, then he might just get an irreversible grip on this, although he does also need to find some defensive tools like Ice Barrier or Ice Block at this point.
Choosing to load up a little bit of the board to get his card draw in, so that way he can refill and start answering more of Shaman's threats. Blood Mage Thalanos, not actually that bad of a pickup, so you can get some more damage in, although DrHippi would have loved to fill out his curve a little bit more efficiently here.
Yeah, and that's the question. Do you damage or do you limit the card draw? I mean, that's the other option that you have in this situation. What's your highest win rate play?
If that one damage really matters here, and that's what you have to count. Assuming you can get maximum damage with each of your remaining Spirit Claws, that's 12 damage. And with that 1/1 sitting right there, your opponent sitting at 13.
Sounds like a plan.
Hypothetically, but that's over 4 turns.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're going to be dependent on. And I think your opponent's going to be looking for more draws to get him back in the game, whether it's freezing your board constantly, whether it's removing it through burn, whether it's gaining health through Ice Barrier, or even Alex Straza. These are all things that can really ruin your game plan if you try to all in on it, and giving him a lot more card draw feeds into that plan.
Yep, brilliant explanation of the decisions, and you can see from just the time DrHippi is taking here that he's unsure as well. And it looks like he has counted the damage the same way the Frodan has counted the damage. And it looks like we're gonna go downtown. No, he's the one he's gonna trade. Okay, he's gonna try and protect his thing from below with the trade, at least lock up some mana or a Forgotten Torch or something to deal with the thing from below. So can totally understand this as well.
And now Breath is starting to hit that magical card draw, picks up Alex Straza. Forgotten Torch allowing him to remove pretty efficiently, and now DrHippi has pretty much no damage. That's not going to be helpful.
It's not. In fact, that's just unhelpful.
Wait.
Bloodlust helps.
6. Oh, he'd be 1 off even if he got the Spell Power Totem.
I mean, you have to do it, right?
Oh, yeah, let's first see what... Oh, you know what? Maelstrom Portal can give you a charge minion.
There's outs.
There are outs. Okay, well...
All right, he whiffed. Well, no, there still is, right? Because you can Maelstrom Portal and hit the charger first, and then Bloodlust afterwards, and it's still lethal.
Yeah, you're right. If you do that, Maelstrom Portal, and you get the Stone Tusk Boar.
Or South Sea Deckhand, because he has a weapon up. There are 2. There are 2 outs.
Or South Sea Deckhand. You are correct.
Get him!
So there's something around, what, 5% chance this happens?
There are 40-something, low 40s, 1-drops, and yeah, 2 outs.
So 4 to 5%. Extremely unlikely it doesn't happen, but it's not impossible.
Well, DrHippi, probably cooler heads prevail, and he doesn't go for it.
Yeah, at that point, you're not that desperate yet.
Right.
Although you're starting to get closer to it when you start seeing what your opponent's doing in this following turn. He plays a secret, he starts drawing a ton of cards.
Look at the recognition of the situation here from Breath. He just saw 2 cards not be played from hand, and instead of cycling extra cards off his Acolyte in this situation, he chose to take a totem off the board. That's with the consideration of specifically cards like Bloodlust. So again, great recognition from Breath. He's playing this game extremely well.
Yeah, and you definitely know it too, because not every person that brings Freeze Mage these days are just bringing it because it's Vogue. You know? They're bringing it because they love the deck, they trust the deck, and they want to play it and win. In this case, DrHippi does pick up the Thunderbluff Valiant. That only gives him 5 damage with the board, plus if he gets the spell power, he would have 8. And with his opponent's 17, it's pretty far off.
It gives him the opportunity to get a harm-free Maelstrom Portal off, though. If he plays Thunderbluff Valiant and Hero Powers here, he has the free trade into the Acolyte, and then you can just use the Portal without giving the additional card draw off the Acolyte. Try and set up for a 2-turn push through this, from his perspective, block or barrier that way.
Yeah, I like that. And I don't really think you're going to get much more off of the Maelstrom Portal in the future against this type of deck.
Very, very timid here.
Okay, choosing to hold on to Thunderbolt Valley. He's playing around something here, but I can't really put my finger quite on it.
I can't either. DrHippi must have found some sort of niche interaction here that he was playing towards, but I can't for the life of me work out what it is.
Yeah. But now that he also knows the secret that Ice Barrier has been revealed, so I wonder if that was factoring into his equations at all, whether or not it was Ice Block versus Ice Barrier. Well, Breath ends up just continuing to draw cards. If you can assemble the packages, which is getting Ice Block and playing it, surviving, and then playing Alexstrasza with enough burn to follow up, that should do it, because DrHippi doesn't have any health restoration in his deck.
Did you say Ice Block into Alexstrasza into burn? Because Breath's hand appears to be Ice Block into Alexstrasza into burn.
Curious.
Yeah, that seems like a good plan. Let's do that.
Well, how does he use his remaining mana here after the Ice Block? He can just take out the 1/1 Searing Totem and then limit his opponent's ability to damage him. The important thing is that he doesn't lose his Ice Block next turn. But without his opponent playing Thunderbolt Valley, I don't really feel like there's many ways to do it.
So, I mean, I was going to say, like, let's rewind the clock for a second and just seriously break down the reads from the opponent here, because Breath, again, that card on the far left of DrHippi's hand, he saw that drawn and not played with something like 7 mana floated on the turn. So I think he pretty much has a hard face-up read on that card being Bloodlust, and this consideration here is, as you said, it's no good him playing the Ice Block if he loses his Ice Block immediately, because that doesn't get him the free turn he needs to play Alexstrasza. So I think based on that hard Bloodlust read, Breath is trying to keep control of the totem board for as long as he possibly can to not lose his Ice Block to the Bloodlust.
Interesting. And DrHippi staggering his threats accordingly so that way he doesn't overextend too much onto the board.
Hey, sure. Let's play that.
Okay. Lightning Storm helps you deal with this pretty efficiently, so you don't have to worry about your totems getting picked apart.
Right.
And he also gets the 3 damage back from the Spirit of Claws. A little bit of a scary moment once again for Breath, but he still has the stall available. He has the Blizzard and the Ice Block. And then he could finish off with Alexstrasza plus a little bit of burn. Only needs to pick up Frostbolt, perhaps?
Yeah, with the 2 7s already in hand with the Roaring Torch and the Fireball, has the Blood Mage to go with it, but that would be 9 mana, meaning he can't ping for the extra 1 that he needed, so he will need an extra draw here. But now, again, by stalling the situation, he's set himself down this far more guaranteed path of protecting an Ice Block into Alexstrasza into burn. This is the dream scenario for a Freeze Mage that you're always trying to set up. And DrHippi is just going to have to try his best to load up as much pressure as he can and beat it.
Yeah, it's really intimidating here. It's not guaranteed for Breath either, even though he's pretty close. Because he knows if he just plays Alexstrasza, he's losing his Ice Block next turn. So he just needs that little bit of extra damage.
He has another free turn of stall with the Blizzard, and now he has another free turn of stall with the Ice Block. So I think like the maximum turns that you can get here is actually to play Blizzard on this turn, and then you get the extra draw, play Alexstrasza on the next turn. But he's going to choose to just go ahead and aggressively Alex here. Feels confident that the second Ice Block in hand is good enough, and we'll see if that works out for him.
Yeah, the second Ice Block should just give him that 1 extra hero power while weaving in the Ice Block.
Yes.
And then, of course, you know, your opponent still has to feel like he has to deal with Alexstrasza. DrHippi will pretty much do that. He's trying to calculate the most efficient way to deal that damage and set his opponent as low as possible. Because if you Bloodlust overkill here, you might send him at a high health.
Yeah, he is going to go through the formalities here. Flame Tongue changes the equation as well, and the Thunder Bluff buff on the Stoneclaw Totem. So he has a bunch of different considerations here into how to deal with the necessary chunks of damage. But as you mentioned, it's all going to be a formality because Breath has it all locked up. There's no way for DrHippi to beat the second block. There's no way for him to heal in the deck. So DrHippi's just going through the motions here, just marching to his death, unbeknownst that the guaranteed kill is in hand for Breath.
All right, so Breath, I mean, he can improperly sequence this.
That's
We've
true.
seen players
that is
mess
true.
up at the final stage before.
Yep.
but just has to make sure he plays the Ice Block this turn. He picks up another form of burn,
that
so
just works.
that just wins the game as well.
Yeah, so even if he didn't get that draw, as Frodo mentioned, if you missed it, he could have just gone ahead and pinged and played the Ice Block, and then he had 14 damage as a follow-up that he could have spread out however he liked. So that draw actually didn't change anything, but it was nice to just put Hippie out of his misery a turn earlier, and now Breath is back in the driver's seat in this series.
Yeah, that's right. One game away from being able to, what many people will consider an upset over DrHippi. But at the same time, he's proven his worth many times over in the Gold League, and perhaps this is the year, Sato, that China is able to prove their worth in global competition.
I mean, they're going to have to, right? They're going to have to step it up going into the new format of 2017 as well, and really push like the Asian scene as a whole is really going to have to try and compete on level footing and grind it out through the mixed championships. So this will be a great marker for some of the Asian players to lay down and really assert their dominance.
We'll find out what happens. Can Breath close out the series, or will DrHippi once again tie it up? The answer is coming up right after this.
The Hearthstone World Championship is sponsored in part by...
One game away is what separates Breath from being able to get his first round win, a crucial one. Remember, this is a double elimination stage group, so even though Breath may win or lose at this point, he still has a chance to go through. Same goes for DrHippi, which I know the Russian-speaking community is out in full force to support him. And whether or not DrHippi is able to go all the way representing Ukraine and figuring it out on his own from this position is yet to be seen, because he's in a tough spot. We've been talking about the target shaman strategies, which have been very prominent in this group. It's been working out for one guy so far, but Breath was able to escape with his shaman in game number 4.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This first round victory is so huge. It's so big, in fact, that we've seen players specifically building lineups for what they expected their first opponent to play. You know, they essentially worked out who they'd be up against through the seedings and just targeted their lineup at beating that one person, because even if your lineup is then unfavored against the other two guys in your group, you have 2 bites at the cherry at that point. So an unfavored lineup is still favored to win one out of the 2 remaining games. So this first round, putting yourself in the winners bracket in the group is such a big deal. Breath on the line for it. DrHippi still has to force his shaman through somewhere.
There it is. Well, that's pretty good way to start off. You have a lot of options to not only remove, but also play out Totem Golem, which is really powerful. Coin Totem Golem, one of the strongest options that Shaman has in the early game.
Yeah, and it's tempting in this situation to take the Spirit Claws Totem Golem curve and maintain your coin, but I think that's potentially still incorrect, because you actually give your opponent some game with developing minions or secrets, or and then using Eaglehorn Bow to interact more favorably with your Totem Golems. But DrHippi does go for that plan, and he's going to get the sad news. I mean, it's a very specific hand that punishes you in this situation, but DrHippi's going to get the bad news that Breath's sitting on pretty much exactly that hand.
Yeah, I think it does give you flexibility because you have Blood Mage Thanos as well. So he had the option to perhaps trade into something that was also really impactful, Secret Keeper, for example. But it is interesting to think about, because I was always told that if you can coin Totem Golem, you should. That's what I was told by many top-level players whenever I asked them to give me feedback on the play. So.
Yeah, that is the first class. It's the 9 a.m. class in the school of George C. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. The player that DrHippi was able to take out in the Summer Championship was George C. And George C, of course, gave us a lot of feedback on how strong Totem Golem was on turn 1. That being said, DrHippi still has a lot of opportunities here. You can either play his second Totem Golem, or you can play the Blood Mage Thanos, as we're talking about, pump up that Spirit Claws to remove, and force his opponent into an awkward situation where he doesn't want to overkill this Thanos with the weapon, but at the same time, leaving spell damage onto the board is extremely threatening to anything he plays.
Yeah, and right here's another small upside of just getting that coin out of your hand early. We talked about it in the Druid matchup with the Innovate. Now he still has that coin in his hand, and there's a cat trick in play. He can pair it with the Lightning Storm now, so it actually works as a positive for him, but based on the shape of his hand, that coin was actually a liability for him at the time that he made the decision.
It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Breath is so afraid of it. He completely respects that. He knows the power of Maelstrom Portal. He also knows his opponent kept the coin.
Yeah.
So these kind of factors are going through both these players' heads. They're on point right now.
Yeah, it's a very well played exchange there from Breath. There's no way you can leave that Blood Mage up, because with the coin in hand, Maelstrom Portal just crushes your dreams at this point. There'd be almost no way back with how big of a swing that would be. So DrHippi now is going to have to find a way, and he will want to line up this Coin Lightning Storm play at some point against the potential cat trick. Of course, he doesn't know what secret it is. There's still snakes and freezing trap within the range. He can identify snakes this turn by attacking into the Argent Squire, but pretty soon he's going to get the sad news that this is cat trick, and he's going to have to find some way of getting that Lightning Storm to line up against it.
There's also this small... Oh, yeah, he's going to coin out the cat trick. There was a small possibility for explosive trap as well, but you know, at this point, DrHippi chooses to test for it, sees the cat trick, and now, I mean, Brett's cards are pretty much out the table outside that Acorn Bow. So if DrHippi can deal with this board, Hunter still is going to be scrapping for damage.
So Hippi's options here are to Storm and Totem Golem, or to take the 1 in 4 Dream on the spell damage roll and try and get a more aggressive board cleared that way. But he is just going to go ahead and Storm. Does get the favorable outcome on the 3-4, so does get a big swing on the board here. And Breath is a little bit behind the play, but he has pushed through a significant amount of chip damage in the early game, which means now the push can potentially begin. Starting to send some of this damage straight downtown. He traded with Totem Golem #1. No such intentions for Totem Golem #2.
And DrHippi is overloaded for 3 mana crystals this turn. He only can hero power. Top Totem would be pretty clutch in this position.
Ayo!
And he gets it to stop his opponent from being able to get more damage in immediately.
That's a whiff. I mean, he does get a 2-3 out of it with the explosive trap, but definitely not the kind of card he's looking for at this situation. And this Taunt Totem, I mean, I was going to say for aggressive decks, I think specifically for Pirate Warrior more than anything. This Taunt Totem can just lock you out of the game sometimes. Hunter does have some game against it with the explosive trap that we're seeing, as well as Unleash the Hound, sometimes being able to do small chunks of damage into it, but still, definitely not what Breath wanted to see in this situation.
Right. Now, going through the list of possible secrets, too, it actually could be any of the 4 we mentioned. It could be the second cat trick, it could be explosive trap, it could be snake trap if he tries to attack into the Secret Keeper, and it could be freezing trap, which would send the Totem Golem back. So DrHippi is trying to usually order the sequence of what's the most destructive to least destructive and play around it in order.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of a blowout in a lot of situations because he wants to test the Totem Golem. He wants to use that minion to attack so he can start getting a clock on his opponent by clearing the freezing trap now. But if he chose to aim at face, then explosive trap blows him out. If he chooses to aim at the trade, then snake trap blows him out. But that ended up as just a simple maths decision from DrHippi, as there are 2 explosive trap in the deck and 1 snake trap. So on the odds, he made the correct decision of making the play that would get punished by snake trap and not the twice as likely explosive trap.
And DrHippi, very attuned to the fact that his opponent trying to put as much damage as possible, because that's the only way Hunter can win. Just rush his opponent down. If he attacks into it, he's also giving up not only taking the damage, but he's also giving up his Taunt Totem, and he needs time to stall, like you said. He didn't even want to play Argent Squire to play around the fact that his opponent might get Unleash the Hounds to add damage onto the board.
And Kill Command as well is a relevant draw. It's not great right now, but it's a relevant draw because, remember, DrHippi is at 9 right now. Breath only has to get him to 2 health with that explosive trap going off, because there's no way DrHippi will be able to end the game without activating it at some point. He is really close to the line here with that Kill Command pickup. Only needs potentially a couple of turns, and as with almost every Face Hunter game, this one is going to come down to the wire, because that is how you play Face Hunter. You kill them exactly 1 turn before they kill you.
Trying to calculate if the Argent Squire will make a difference. It doesn't seem like it will. With 10 damage on the board and your opponent at 20, it just seems like you have the 2-turn no matter what happens. Breath, of course, going to try to chew through this in case he picks up more charge minions. But the plan still stays the same. He puts his opponent down to 7. DrHippi very scared of what that secret might be. Thing from below. Does that change anything? I mean, it helps him secure up his defenses, so that way his opponent can't Leroy him down, perhaps.
Yeah, his defense isn't a huge deal. As you said, there's 1 Taunt minion in play, so it'd have to be a charge minion specifically. There are a bunch of them, to be fair. Horse Riders and the and the Leroy as well. So the second taunt term does help, but the most important thing here for Hippie is to secure his own clock. He cannot give the extra turn over to Breath, so having a 5/5 body in that sense is actually just really powerful as well.
Yep, and he sees that as non-explosive trap, which is huge for him, so that way he doesn't go down to 5. And remember, Breath is just 2 damage off, or if he picks up a Beast to go combine with Kill Command.
1 Fiery Bat, 1 Kindly Grandmother, 1 Direwolf.
I saw you Leroy Jenkins?
I believe that is a Leroy Jenkins. Does that find him an extra turn anywhere? He can take out the 5/5. He'd give his opponent 2 more power. It would just be 10 damage coming straight back in again. He'd have to kill command a minion as well.
Yeah, if he plays Leroy and Kill Command, he also forgoes his hero power, which is really annoying.
Which essentially just makes the extra turn completely useless. It doesn't get anywhere for him.
If he just straight up Kill Commands the Azure Drake, there's 9 power on board. And he's at 10.
And he would actually... Oh no, there's the Horse Rider. I was
there's
looking
the Horse Rider.
I was like, there's no totems on the board. Thunderbluff can't do anything. But
You're right.
There's the Horse Rider. The totem killer in this case will turn out to be the Hunter killer if Breath makes the play with just the kill command. But in that world, you know, how does he even force the Leroy through in his mind? This could just be a checkmate situation, but I'm sure he'll play to his minute outs. But it looks like this series is going to go all the way and potentially go all the way down to a Face Hunter mirror.
Oh my goodness. That would be quite exhilarating if that's how it ends up happening. Breath gonna go through his options. I think he's just gonna try to do his due diligence and see how much damage he can produce onto the board here. Gets the damage in with the weapon, just hope that he can get the final 2 the next turn. But we know what ends up happening here with the Argent Horse Rider. That's gonna wrap up the game. Lightning Bolt, of course, just for the extra insurance. Really close game. We talk about how you're trying to target Shaman. Shaman did get all the way to the corner.
Yeah.
But when you corner the Tiger, the fangs come out, and this Shaman was able to get a crucial victory for Dr. Hippie.
Yeah, and I also talked about how close Face Hunter games are, because it's a deck that does just ride a knife edge. You know, Firebat explained during the series that he cast about how they're calculating the amount of turns they need with their hero power, and that kind of strategy always leads to it coming down to the wire, where Hunter's trying to find that 1 turn or get that 1 draw that they need. That's why you see so many games end in that fashion, and unfortunately for Breath, he couldn't quite get there. But there is going to be a Face Hunter emerging victorious in our Game 7, because we're going to see the mirror.
Yeah, that's going to be coming up right after this, the conclusion to the series. We'll be right back. Can you smell that, Sottle? It's a Game 7 that we have in the air. It's delicious. I can't wait to see what's going to happen between these 2 guys, because one person's going to be delightfully elated, the other person, the soul's going to be crushed just a little bit.
Yeah, it smells like victory. It also smells like disappointment, because these 2 players are going to experience both poles of the spectrum of emotions. One of them is going to be sitting pretty in the group, heavy favorite for a spot at BlizzCon proper. The other one is going to have to fight back all the way from the lower bracket.
That's right. It is Group C, so we do have 2 other players in the group that they'll ultimately jockey for position. And that's what they have to do in order to get past each other here in this Hunter mirror. Move on to the winner's match or to the loser's match and see what happens from there. It's been an excellent series so far. It's been back and forth. They've been splitting games all the way through from the very beginning until now. It's always been Breath taking the first game advantage. Can Dr. Hippie be the first to break that serve and be able to win 2 in a row? No player's been able to do it this series.
Tennis. That's a sport I can actually relate to you on, Dan. Like any other American sport you come out with, I just feel like, oh no, we're doing American sports. I'm out.
I had some examples. I had T lined up for you.
Nice.
The Wimbledon examples. Nice. Really trying to cater to my audience.
I have a question for you, Dan.
Yes.
You know, even as few what's the word I'm looking for? As recently, there we go. As recently as Summer Championships. If I'd have said to you, BlizzCon opening week, we are going to see such a high-stakes game as this, decided by a Face Hunter mirror. What would you have called me? What choice names would you have had for me?
I said you were a Hearthstone cast.
Ah, there you go.
And we had some Hunter action back in the spring championships where Sidonia took down Rosti.
Right.
And that was also exhilarating. Now, don't let the fact that their aggressive nature fool you. This matchup does have a lot of nuance, just even from the very beginning. Keep in mind that Secret Keeper, for example, gets buffed both ways here.
Yes.
So you have to keep in mind how your cards interact with your opponent's cards. Breath choosing to tracking immediately and has a cat trick, because he knows that is probably the most convincing way he can swing the board. Also because it plays in tandem with his Eagle Horn bow.
Yeah, Dr. Hippie is off to the snowbally start here. Breath does have the quick shot to take care of it, but it is Dr. Hippie with the far more aggressive curve. Breath is just the guy with that. Breath is just the guy with that hand that's just begging for a Cloaked Huntress, but nowhere in sight right now.
He knew it too, like when he saw the coin, because Dr. Hippie said that his opponent picked tracking, didn't really do anything with his coin. He knows his opponent has the coin. Try to punish it by playing that instead of the Kindly Grandmother, which is normally a very good setup. And he is also very well aware of the rules of this matchup. The rules of this matchup, of course, is if you're able to be the aggressor, get the advantage, all your minions have taunt. Because your opponent has to keep clearing, because your hero power on the other side will continue to snowball the advantage.
Yeah, there's one card that can potentially change that equation, and it's Explosive Trap. That's the one card that allows the hunter that is behind on the initiative to actually start making the push forward again, because they can ignore the minions with the Explosive Trap in play. So that's the saving grace for Breath. And speaking of saving graces, that Horse Rider came marching off the top. Never has its battle cry been more appropriate. Don't worry, loves, the Cavalry's here. We got this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tracer just sneezed somewhere in the world. And at this point, Dr. Hippie's aggression has come to a pretty commanding halt. Now he can play a little bit more value-oriented with the trades. But then how do you follow this up? Do you play perhaps the second hat trick here and just hero power play it slow? Do you want to accelerate the damage by playing the bow and get it out before the secrets? These are all things going through Dr. Hippie's mind right now.
Yeah, they are for sure. And is it early enough to start thinking, thinking about hero power economy in this situation? If not, the bow is probably the most high value play, but you do skip a hero power by doing that you don't get by just developing a secret. So all sorts of considerations going in for Dr. Hippie here, and this matchup is so often decided by these early struggles for board dominance, and whoever has the initiative and the life total initiative, honestly, come turn 5 or 6 or so.
It's true. I do like popping the Kindly Grandmother this turn with the trade. So
I agree.
I would move that in so I can get the 3-2 on board. I wouldn't hate playing Freezing Trap, for example, and then just hero powering and just kind of isolating your opponent down and trying to get as much damage from that 3-2 that comes onto the board. Okay, interesting. So I was originally thinking about popping the Kindly Grandmother into the 2-1, but he chooses instead to force this return onto the Horse Rider. What does this usually imply?
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff indeed. He potentially just wants to have this minion around just in case there's Explosive Trap, things like that. He's seen a slow developmental hand from Breath, so he probably has a read on some form of secrets in hand. So maybe he is scared of the blowout of Explosive Trap. As I said, it's one of the few cards that can be a really big swing from this situation when you're so far ahead, is if you play into a big Explosive Trap. So Dr. Hippie probably just hedging his bets, and now gets the good news that has the Eaglehorn Bow to take care of the Secret Keeper, and now going to probably just develop Cat Trick. A lot of upside for this now, develop some potential board presence for him, and adds the extra charges to that bow.
This is a game with high stakes. You know, it's at one point, this is already the late game for Hunter versus Hunter.
Yeah.
They both played out their early strategies, and now they're reaping the seeds that were sown early on. And now you can see that Breath, playing once again around the potential Cat Trick, plays the Explosive Trap, but no bow charges. Imagine if he was able to get that initiative with the bow.
Right.
How much damage would he be able to generate?
Yeah.
At least 6 to 9 more because of how many secrets have been played out.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it goes to show how big the initiative is in this situation. Dr. Hippie has been the man asking the questions, dictating the play, and yeah, Breath's had some solid answers. The Horse Rider draw was huge. The Explosive Trap here in answer to the Cat Trick is huge, but answers are not what you want to be using in this matchup. You want to be the guy pushing, and that is very much what Dr. Hippie is doing, and eventually, Breath is just going to run out of answers.
Dr. Hippie, once again, attacking. He didn't necessarily play Kind Grandmother to play into that at all, but of course, he has to just be very conservative to see what his opponent has first, whether it's Snake Trap, whether it's another Freezing Trap, be extremely mindful of it. And by putting out this, he still has a reasonable amount of power on board, still 3 attack, and he catches Divine Shield. This is very annoying for his opponent to deal with.
Right, he actually generates the same amount of damage on board as he would have done with the Grandmother, but he gets the extra benefit of those Divine Shields, which survive exactly that second Explosive Trap that was just drawn. So Dr. Hippie's decision paying dividends here for him. That's a whiff for him, probably his first big one of the game, but he's pushed through so much early damage here. He's in such a commanding position.
Yes.
His hero power clock is just so real at this point. Probably just gets there.
And again, just trying to maximize his damage here. If you play Snake Trap, he forces his opponent to not be able to tag into his minion. But the Kindly Grandmother here, what he ends up doing is setting up just more pressure again. And he's so close to finishing up the game at this point. Breath just pretty much forced to play defense. We're talking about how all your minions essentially have taunt. He has to clear off even the smallest of his 1/1s here. He's gonna have to hope that his opponent doesn't have damage in the hand, essentially, after clearing a couple of these.
But even then, he leaves the 1/1 in play most likely and just sends his damage to the face. But even then, his clock is just so quick, just with the hero power damage coming in, that Breath is just trying to find a way to navigate through this.
Yeah, this is one of the things that when you were looking at Snake Trap originally the previous turn that I was kind of wondering about, because it makes it awkward to attack into the 2/1. Speaking of awkward here, how does that Explosive Trap work? You can set your opponent down to 3 this turn, and Explosive Trap doesn't exactly checkmate him.
It's close enough, though. You can actually take the trade as well into the Argent Squire. That doesn't actually change your outs. And then his minions on board die to the Explosive Trap.
Right.
You hero power him down to 4. Next turn, if he attacks, he's down to 2. You hero power to finish him off. If he doesn't attack, well, great. He didn't attack. Like, he's going to die anyway at some point. So
yeah.
This is actually as close as it gets to a checkmate situation without actually being checkmate.
Oh, I apologize. It's because their cat trick was laying there all along in the secret, something that we forgot about because of how fast and furious it's been. And DrHippi, if he's just able to put himself over that final hump, how much damage can Breath even generate at maximum right here? Because he knows his opponent's holding that 5-mana Argent Horse Rider.
Right, exactly. He's allowing him potentially 1 more damage here by sending this 1 damage to face. I think it's just ever so slightly better to trade with the Argent Squire, but it's going to be a complete formality. Breath is going to give it up. DrHippi does end up breaking serve for the first time in this series, and he's going to be our man marching on 1 game closer to that BlizzCon appearance.
Another Game 7 series. What an exciting finish down to the wire. And DrHippi is the one who comes out barely ahead of his opponent Breath. And now we have an opportunity to look at what this means for the group. DrHippi is going to be playing the winner of Amnesia versus Yulsik, which is happening tomorrow. Breath, of course, is not eliminated. He's in the bottom of Group C, still has a chance to keep the Chinese hope alive. But for now, you know, DrHippi, job well done, and yet another victory under his belt for HCT. We do have DrHippi standing by with a couple of words. Let's hear from our winner of the previous match.
Joined by DrHippi, a 7-game set that takes place. This was such a grueling match. I can only imagine you're out of breath. But if I had to ask you one question about this one, if you picked one specific spot, what would you say was the most critical point in this match for you?
I think it's when I killed Shaman into his freeze mage.
What specifically about that? Was that matchup you feel it's super favorable for you, and why?
No, it's not favorable for me. I didn't want only this matchup, but I killed it. Unlucky.
Unlucky, but you were able to take the set anyway. Congratulations on your win and good luck in the rest of the rounds. So that's our 3rd match. We've wrapped things up, but we got one more coming up for you guys. It's going to be Dione taking on